Hi everyone, today we want to talk about variance and standard deviation. Imagine that you have final exam and you're thinking whether to study alone or study in group to be prepared for your exam. Getting back to your performance through the quizzes you had during the semester, you can see that the grades that you got after studying in group are like this, and the grades that you got after studying alone are like this. Which method of study do you prefer to choose according to the result of the scores? Just pause the video, think for a second, and then continue. Now your brain has started analyzing these numbers to get a reasonable conclusion. For each dataset, you will start considering an average or mean value. And then you're going to analyze how far each of the data points are from this mean value. But in order to have a more realistic conclusion, we need to see on average how far all the data points are from the mean value. And here is where the concept of variance will arise. Variance is a measure of how far a set of numbers is spread out from their average value. Well, in other words, it tells us how much the values in a dataset deviate from the average value. A lower variance indicates that the data points have less spread around the mean, while a higher variance indicates that the data points have more spread around the mean. Here is the formula of the population variance. So let's go and see how we will get into this formula. So as you remember, we said that for each data point, we need to find a deviation from the mean. So as you see, if we consider the point xi, we just need to simply subtract the value of this xi and the value of the mean. So it would be xi minus x bar, or our mean. So in the example that we are talking about, if we calculate all the differences for each of the points, you will see that we will have the first difference as x1 minus x bar, the second difference as x2 minus x bar, the third one x3 minus x bar, and so on to the last point. So as we said, we want to calculate the average of these differences, which is by definition the sum of them divided by the number of them. However, some of these difference values might be negative because some of the numbers, some of the points will be lower than our mean value. So in order to avoid resulting in a cancellation of negative and positive values, and in order not to get into a zero value, we consider the square power of these differences. So the average would be like the sum of the square of these differences divided by the number of them. And this is what we show with sigma square and is the formula of population variance. Therefore, in order to calculate the variance, first we need to calculate the mean. So here, as you see, the mean value for the group study dataset is 86.28, and the mean value for solo study dataset would be 83. Okay, now from now on, what we need to do is just expand the formula and then fill different part of it with the data that we have. As you see, this summation will be expanded to the sum of 7 differences. Each of these differences is for each of the data points that we have, like x1 minus x bar is the first difference, and then square it, then add to x2 minus x bar, then square it, and so on. Doing this, just like instead of x1, just inserting 85 instead of x bar, which is our mean value, inserting the value of it, calculating this difference, and square it. Then add it to the second difference. Doing this calculation, it will give us a population variance value for the study group dataset. Doing the same calculation for the other data set, we will get the number 26.85, the population variance for the solo study data set. As you remember, we said that in order to avoid not to get into a zero value for the variance, we decided to square the differences. Therefore, the variance units are squared. However, we want the units to be the same as the original data. So we define standard deviation, which is just simply a square root of the variance. Therefore, the standard deviation value for the group study dataset would be, and the standard value for the solo study dataset would be. Now, what is more important than calculating these values is to know that what do these numbers mean and how can they help us make a better decision on whether to study in group or alone. The variance and standard deviation for the group study method are lower than those for solo study method. It suggests that the group study method produces more consistent results. With the solo study method, we will have the risk of significantly underperforming. Variance and standard deviation provide insights into the reliability and predictability of each study method. And as you see in our example, the group study method is more predictable because the numbers, the scores are less spread through the mean. However, in solo study, you can see that we have lots of fluctuation. At some point, you get 77. However, in another quiz, you got 92. So it's less predictable and less consistent. Okay, if you paid attention, the formula that I was talking about, I kept saying population variance formula. Actually, when you are dealing with the whole data points, all the data points that you have, then we call it the population variance. Well, in the real world, sometimes you do not have access to all the data points of an event. Well, sometimes we have access just to a sample of the data. Therefore, in that case, we will call it the sample variance formula. And we will show it with S squared just to make it different from sigma. Then the formula would be like this with a slight change, which is in the denominator, instead of the whole number of the data, we will have n minus 1, where n, small n, is the sample of data. Now let's see how we can have this calculation in Excel. We want to calculate mean. Well, here I will click on this cell. I will go to the formulas part, insert function, and here, as you see, I can see the average. So I will double click on it, and next step is to choose the numbers that I want to take their average or mean. I will choose them. You will see that here it will shows you from B3, cell B3 to cell B9 has been chosen. And then I will click done, and it will give me the number which represent the mean value. Same as mean, for calculating the population variance, sample variance, and population standard deviation and sample standard deviation, we just need to go to formulas, insert function, and find a function which is related to these concepts.